Cool, so we're live. I am Lee, I'm the Secretary of UNAFSA. I'm here with Krista Tran, Jen Yang, Lucy Tran, Thoa Kim Nguyen, and Mi Fung and Jen Ye are hopping on in just a second. They're having a little bit of difficulties right now, but I'll start anyway. I'll start off. Last time we did a Women in Leadership 1.0, and it was really just a warm-up. And so we wanted to give it a go again so we can dig deeper this time, and it's going to get real. So personally for me, a lot of things happened this week. So I read a story over the weekend that was entitled The Man Trap. And it talks about the traps of feminism and how, everyone is knowledgeable about how men are expected to do more domestic work and have a fair share of duties with women now, but then there's like a drawback for men that women don't have to encounter. I thought that was a really weird, awkward article. And another thing was Trump administration released a budget proposal which would cut all federal funds to Planned Parenthood. So that was another disappointment. And I just came home from a work social in which the director, in the absence of our new executive assistants, reminded us that we should not ask her to take out the trash. And he said it in a very weird, joking manner where it was kind of uncalled for. It sounded more like a joke rather than, like a lesson. So that, was another disappointment to me. So as you can see, a lot of these things are on my mind all the time about women's issues, and especially so this week because it leads up to our panel today where I'm talking to all these ladies. So anyway, I'm super happy to be here with you all, and we're going to banter on some random aspects of us being a woman in the world. So let's start off with a rapid fire round of questions. Let's start with the age-old question of, when you're rolling a goikgung, aka spring rolls, do you fold the sides first or the bottom? Let's start with Lucy Tran.
So I thought about this today and I was like, what do I actually do? And I actually made goikgung the other night, but I actually fold the first, not the sides, the front first. So I don't know what that says about my personality. Maybe it's one thing at a time, but yeah, for sure the front first.
Yeah, I also do.
I'll kick it over to Jen.
Is that Jen? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. There's two Jens, so I got confused. But yeah, I totally do the bottom first or the front first.
Let's go with Krista.
Me? Yeah, I like doing the sides first. I like making sure that it has a secure end before rolling it up. But now listening to you guys, I might try doing one, the side, bottom, and side to see if I can change it up.
Let's go with Thoa.
I have done the sides all my life, so I think those that do the bottom it's a very strange concept to me.
MP or Jen Ye?
Oh, can you? Oh, yes, you can hear us. I definitely do the bottom first, maybe one or two times, and then I fold the sides, and then I fold the rest of it. So I actually think Thoa is a really strange specimen.
Thoa, I think you're perfect. I do the sides as well.
It's not a burrito.
Cool. Well, so I will start off with a question that I think has been bothering me ever since I was more aware about women's issues. So feminist has become known as a very bad word. So I was Googling around today. I was aware of that already, but I was Googling around today, and then I ran across some threads on Reddit, and they talked about, obviously this is from men. They posted, if someone came to you and asked you, do you support feminism? How do you deal with that? What are you supposed to say? Because I'm thinking, because there's two types of feminism. One is to make sure that men and women have equal rights. Two is, the second type of feminism is to demonize all men so that they can put women on a pedestal so that, you know, they have more rights. And then they proceeded to say that I don't think the first type of feminism exists. And so that makes me wonder, like, why has it become a bad word? Like, is it, you know, because we're approaching it the wrong way? You know, is it the way that we're taught as we're growing up? What are we doing wrong? What are we doing right about it? I'm gonna pick on Krista for this.
I wanted to think about this first. But I guess when you said the negative connotation of feminism, I immediately thought of the term feminazi, which is kind of what you're describing, as in like, yeah, someone who like puts down men in order to only highlight women. And I think that's, I guess like just the way that a lot of people have been approaching it has been that way. And, you know, like when people do something that has a negative connotation, it's more easily remembered than when people do something that has a positive outcome. So that's kind of like what leaves a bad taste in their mouth, I guess.
Can I pick on
Anybody else?
A next?
Oh, did you see my name? So I guess for me, and this kind of goes for a lot of issues that are happening right now, I'm a real big believer in conversation first. Obviously, everyone has their own stance on something, and everyone has their own definition or perception on what feminism is. You know, it could be that extreme, or it could be more for just gender equality in general. But I think, you know, a lot of times when you get so caught up in your own opinion, you don't even allow for conversation to happen. So, you know, someone's opinion on feminism might be different than mine, and I think that's okay as long as there's a mutual desire to understand each other, because, you know, you don't really think a certain way out of thin air. It's because of your surroundings or how you grew up, or just the environment around you really impacts the way that you think. And I feel like, you know, if I really did happen to meet someone who, I guess I would classify them as like an extreme feminist, you know, I would want to know exactly, I guess, why they think the way they do and try to understand them from their perspective, because maybe something happened to them, you know, when they were growing up, and I just don't know, but I don't think it's right for me to assume. And I think that a lot of times in this day and age, when we don't allow for conversation to happen, it ends up creating such like a hostile environment. And like I said, this goes for like a lot of topics, not even just feminism.
You know, what's funny that you mention is like, I think it's like from experiences, Jen, you're talking about like people who grow up in a certain background or something like that. I think it's also about like relatability, right? How is someone relatable to a certain term, and can they resonate with it? A lot of times when you have a movement or something that pushes people forward, it's like from conversation, which I totally agree with. And it's also, you know, how much does that messaging resonate with someone in order for them to classify themselves as, you know, a feminist, or maybe if in the case you're talking about like extreme feminism, you know, not that obviously we want to look at all views of perspective, but I think a lot of times people tie it to their personality and to themselves. And that's what really defines where they see and what definition they like to gear towards themselves too.
And just to go off of, so I think it's interesting that Lucy brought up the word movement, right? Because feminism is rooted in history. It's not necessarily how like we interact now, or the way that we think. So I'm cheating a little bit. Google says there's 3 ways. I honestly think there's 4 ways of feminism. The first wave was the 1830s to the 1900s, and that's really when females went out and they fought for, like, you know, the very basic freedoms for us to have. The second wave is the 1960s to the 1980s, and that's when, after females got into the workplace, then they're just like, well, WTF, there's so many things that are just so men-centric, and then that started the debate. down to the 1990s to what they call the present day. It's the micropolitics of gender equality, and that's going to be a lot of the topics I feel we're going to talk about this during today's webinar. The fourth wave of feminism that I do want to speak about, it's not just the idea that females are talking to each other, but it is females and other people of color and basically minority groups coming together. So we're moving away the idea of feminism and humanitarian. I cannot talk. Humanitarian.
Humanitarian. Wait, humanitarian.
But it's basically the idea, the fourth wave is the idea of not just like females empowering each other, but females empowering each other across all different circles of groups that feel microaggressions. So I think for those who say, oh, why are you a feminist? I would always at work at least, I was like, why aren't you? Are you like Trump? And then I'll stay away from politics if moderator says, don't speak.
Look, Lee's eyebrows look like they're about to fall off from how much she's reacting.
Well, I'm just like surprised that somebody asked you, why are you a feminist? It's just, I don't know, for me.
I think it's because when people talk, like Krista, you mentioned like feminist Nazis, that's what people think of. Like, you guys are man haters. You guys want like guys at the be like bottom bees, but it's not about that. It's about seeing females and not persons of color, and regardless of like race, gender, sexuality, that we're all equal and we should be treated as so. And that for me is the fourth wave of feminism. That is modern day feminism and what activism is. Well, I showed up.
So we also touched on this last time, and I think this is natural because Cynthia, you did mention about like supporting each other. And some of you expressed that mentorship is like a very elusive concept. Not a lot of people understand it, how to pursue it, and why it's even important. So let's talk about that. Why is it important, and how do we pursue mentorship? I believe that Jen Yang, you were also interested in talking about this?
Yeah, I really believe in mentorship. I think it is something, especially when you are younger, it's something that you really need, just in terms of not even just getting advice, but just seeing another female leader out there that you feel that you can rely on or that you can trust. It's something very important because it kind of like allows you to play around with the idea of you potentially being a leader. And I think that is very important, especially when you're young, to see that in someone else and being able to see that in yourself, and then taking that extra step to pursue leadership. And then, of course, the whole mentorship and then getting advice is also super important, especially because there's so much knowledge that can be passed on from someone who has gained all those experiences, and then pass it on to you so that you can learn from them, and then hopefully not make all the same mistakes, but like make your own mistakes and then learn from theirs as well. Yeah, I think that's it. We can pass it on to Krista.
Sure. Yeah, I think mentorship is super important also because like it gives people an example. You know, like when we were younger, like when all of us were younger, there was no Vietnamese congresswoman, you know, in America. And now that there is, I'm just like, whoa, you know, these kinds of things are possible. But back then I thought that only white men were running Congress. And so having mentors or having role models in general just gives you an example and makes you feel like your goals and your dreams are validated and they're not silly. Yeah. I can pass on to Lucy.
You'd also mentioned that you know, how you're in the healthcare field, but you're not necessarily like a nurse or a doctor. And at the time that you chose to go into the field, you didn't have like a mentor to help you navigate that. So like, can you tell us about your experience there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was pre-med for a while, and I felt like that was the only option for me because those were the only examples given to me. But as I strayed away from being a doctor into getting a master's in pathology, there weren't really that many mentors in my field that I could talk to. There weren't, like, even on my own campus when I went to advising for my major, they're like, oh, let me Google what that means, that profession that you're looking for. And I was like, is there anybody out there, any mentor, like one mentor that can help me? And I had to do a lot of searching and like a lot of networking before I could find like one person who was in the field that could talk to me about it. And so maybe, mentorship is important, but also like accessibility to the mentorship as well. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Should I pass it on to Lucy now?
I think it's awesome for mentorship. I think it's great to have it from women. I think it's almost like you have a visionary to look forward to. But what I've always found interesting is that I've really, really respected the male mentors in my life as well. In feminism, I think we try to push for equality, and if we're looking at it that way, that if there are men in my life that can also push me in the direction that I want to go in, that's exactly what I want to be able to teach them, but I also want them to guide me and understand how to guide me as well. I've found in my life that I have had a number of male mentors that have really pushed me, really challenged me, and almost didn't think about just my gender. And when they did, they were cognizant about how to approach it and learned from me about it. So I think it's really important to have those folks in your life and not to just discredit the men in your life that have pushed and challenged and got me to where I am today. But I think women tend to have a lot of the relatability piece, which I think is fantastic to continue to seek. It's not easy finding quality mentors, and I think it's along the lines of relatability and how they can challenge a person. And I a lot recently, especially in the community too. So I can totally pass it on. I want to pass it on to Twa.
Thanks. Echoing Lucy, I think mentorship in general shouldn't be just a divide in gender, and it has been. And like Lucy said, her success, and then I feel like my success in my career, as well as just in the nonprofit sector, as well as my personal life, I've had a lot of men mentors that would help and guide me along life, and also treat me the same way that they would treat any other student or intern or whatever position it was. And I think it's just the approach that there's a lot of realism in the way that they teach, and then also if anybody shows some type of emotional investment, and then also physical investment of time and materials, I think that gives people the sense of capability, and then also it just brings that more fulfilling interaction overall. And I've noticed in workplaces that have great coaches, it's men and women, and they contribute and bounce ideas off of each other, and they're, like we say on the ideals of feminism overall, it's an equal interaction. They're conscious of each other's differences. It's not to say that we should be gender blind or like colorblind, but they use that to an advantage of diversifying the office or school or organization, whatever it is. So I encourage also women to step out and find your mentors, I mean. I think oftentimes because people aren't like us, maybe physically or even mentally, we're timid or scared to go and approach that. But I've learned that the worst answer you can always get is no, and then the best answer is a yes. So go out and find someone that you want to embody.
Yeah,
Great.
so I also have a newly established relationship with one of my colleagues who happens to be a man, and he's the one that like approached me about the mentorship. And I've had like a few mentors before, and none of them as effective as it is now. So I definitely agree with Lucy in terms of like being okay and even looking up to male role models too. No, MP, it's not Hop.
That was me.
You know, it's fine. I think the problem that we tend to see is like when girls may have, or women may have male mentors, they may almost see it as they're joining the boys club. And I hate that concept of like, I'm now part of the boys club. There are not other women like me. I'm different. And that almost ruins the concept of like women empowerment for each other. And even not just empowerment, but like supporting one another on a regular cause. Like when you think you've joined the boys club, like reality check, girlfriend, you are not a part of the boys club and there shouldn't be one. So, but tangent, random.
Oh my God, I can relate a lot with that. I think just entering the very first few years of my job, I felt like I had to go into the boys club and act a certain way, or even make myself even more overly aggressive, just to put myself on the same playing field. And then even, so, you know, sexism and misogyny is really subtle sometimes. So there are moments where my male coworkers will come to me and they're like, "Oh, you're just like one of the guys," and I was like, "Well, okay, sure." And that's like a backhanded comment. It's just like, well, you've already divided in your mind and in your world what type of sections are out there. Why didn't you just say like I'm part of the company now, or I get the culture out here, or that you know, I'm just doing a good job as far as like maybe closing contracts or deals or whatever it is. So I think microaggression comments like that really get to me, and I even see it in daily interactions where they're like, "Oh, you're just one of the guys." It's like, I'm just a friend, or I'm just a person that's trying to relate to you. I don't genderify my actions. I don't know if you guys have gone through that, but I'm much more aware of it, like even hyper aware of it. We can bring the conversation back to. That was a slight tangent.
Well, that's a good point about men saying backhanded compliments along the lines of, "Oh, you're one of the guys." I think I also notice a lot of women doing that too. Like, I'm not one of the girls. And I think when you look at that, it's like just as worse, because now you're separating yourself from like the female gender, and you're basically raising yourself up above them in terms of value. And yeah, that's, I don't know. Personally, my opinion is that's not something a feminist would do. And as for your comment in terms of like what's subtle and what's obvious in terms of like biases and like inequality, sexual aggressions, I wanted to ask Jen Yang, because I know that you are very passionate about sex education, to shed light on your work and maybe touch on the details of like the dangers of obvious like rape and harassment versus like some more of the like this more subtle harassments.
Well, I'm very passionate towards sex education in children, and the reason for that is because sometimes if you don't learn to love yourself early enough, or if you don't learn to protect yourself early enough, growing up and you know, it's really easy to fall into like a cycle of abuse when you haven't learned something from very, very young. So that's the stuff that I do when I do sex education. I do basically I just talk to parents and tell them to educate their children even as young as like 4 or 5, just telling them that, you know, the importance of their body and protecting it, etc. In terms of harassment, I have been, and I'm pretty sure all of you guys have been, victims to catcalling, especially when you're walking on the street, having people honk at you in the car, or even just making comments on the street. And as sucky as that sounds, I think most of it is just they're trying to intimidate you or intimidate just the person itself, because they feel like you're a smaller person. They want to get a laugh out of it. And it's not the greatest feeling, I think. I think it's really terrible. And it really allows the person who's being catcalled to feel small and feel minimized, because, you know, now you're being like intimidated by some person, and you don't know whether you should speak up or not. And then of course, you know, there's stuff that you can do to stand up for yourself, or you walk away, and then that's another choice. Like, what do you do? Like, as a feminist or as a woman, do you now sit there and stand up for yourself, or do you like walk away and like consider it like you being a bigger person? All those are very, very small. And then even like I feel like when I'm at work, or not at work, but like when I'm just working with the community, and when I get called like, you know, like soft names like sweetheart or dear, or anything that feminizes me, I guess, in a way, it doesn't make me feel great. And I don't know, and I've never actually known what the purpose of doing that is, but I figured it's because you know, they just feel like they're, in a way, like not to say that they feel like they're a bigger person, but they feel like we are someone to be taken care of all the time, or like that we're delicate. And I think that plays in like with gender roles and how we're viewed. But yeah, I think I talked a lot, and I don't think I hit all the topics, but I think yeah, does anyone have any comments on my comments?
I feel like it has to do with, I'm not saying everyone assumes this, but I think there is some kind of assumption that because women are delicate, we're not as outspoken. And I'm going to bring up a situation that I think I still laugh about sometimes, but this past fall we had our e-board retreat, and I remember we had went out one night and we were all leaving to go home. And I remember these guys like made this unnecessary comment about how they love like beautiful Asian girls. And I just flipped him off. Don't do that, by the way. I guess you could stand up for yourself, but maybe in a more classy manner. But I totally flipped him off. And I remember like seeing the reaction on his face. Like he was just so taken aback that, you know, it was almost if he was just surprised that I wouldn't just take it and walk away. And I don't know. I feel like there's just a lot of assumption that because women are, I guess, more fragile or something like that, that we're just gonna take whatever is said to us. Like I've definitely had many times of being like sexually harassed or catcalled, and it's not cool, but people do it because they're confident that I'm not gonna do anything about it, or I'm not gonna say anything back to them. And I always know, I've always at least witnessed, you know, the moment that you do say something, all of a sudden they either are really surprised or really angry or frustrated. And I feel like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen this one article before. It was like one of those pop culture things where a lot of things happen on Tinder, I guess. And like when a girl either ignores a guy or like says they're not interested, and then the guy all of a sudden becomes this different person where they're just really upset.
You ain't hot anyways.
Like I remember reading this article about this white guy who, an Asian girl like just didn't respond to him, and he started calling her really like derogatory terms, and that went like super viral because he just all of a sudden became really racist because she didn't respond to him the way that she wanted. So yeah, I feel like a lot of it goes with that female stereotype that a lot of people think we just won't stand up for ourselves.
You know what's funny is I saw like a similar situation in terms of like dating apps where like a feminist, she hosted a day where like you're supposed to like, I don't know, like take compliments rather than either ignoring them or saying like no thanks. Um, so the situation when he hit her up was, hey, you look really good. And then she'd say, I know, thanks. And then he would respond, never mind. Actually, I think you need to work out a lot more. And the lesson we took away from that was that like sometimes as women, we just can't win either way because you're expected to be, like have subtle personality, like just accept it gracefully or being quiet about it or even being, I don't know, I guess being shy is what they would expect out of it. So you can't really even like speak out in any way. You can't speak out by rejecting them and you can't speak out by accepting their compliment either. And I found that really funny and really ironic as well. Was there anyone that wanted to comment on this topic before I moved on to an audience question?
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to add to that is that there's this power dynamic between, and I'm not speaking for all, but it seems that some men think that they have an entitlement to a woman, and because of the stereotypes of her being weaker or docile, that it's up to the man to make the move and to be the one that is coercing this interaction because she's playing hard to get, or she's playing shy, or she doesn't know what she wants. And that's something that I found a pattern when it came to either like online dating or apps or anything like that, or even just simple interactions out in public. And I think some people view it as like a common thing. This happens all the time. Why are you taking it so serious? But when you take a step back, it's just like, why do you have to address somebody in that manner? Why wouldn't you approach them in a more polite way? And also to realistically think that the worst answer you're going to get is a no. So yeah, why wouldn't you just approach it in a common neutral ground? That's just my observations.
I think that also extends, I'll be really quick. I think that also extends into the workplace. So this happened to me, I think pretty much when I first started. So for those who, so me at the workplace versus me at UNAPSA is like almost two different people. So I am not as aggressive at work. So especially because I'm still trying to learn the landscape, getting a lay of land. And I'm very quiet as I'm observing other people. So the first few months when we got a new exec in, and then he's always like, MP, honey, you're doing such a great job. And then I think after 2 weeks, I just had enough of it. So I went directly to my manager and said, I'm not comfortable with this guy. At work, I didn't spend any names, but apparently a lot of females at work also feel the same way. And I think a lot of it has to do with educating somebody, right? So if a guy like calls you pet names because he thinks that it's endearing, someone just needs to tell him, no, it's not. It's making a lot of people uncomfortable. So at work, just don't ever feel shy, unless you're like working for Uber, then get the F out of there. And just, let management know, talk to people ops, talk to HR, talk to like other people, because there is strength in numbers. And again, a reminder that we need to be there for each other.
So we have an audience question. What are some advice on raising a daughter? My plan was to raise strong, independent women. But now guys team, but not guys team? Should I be worried about tomboying my girls?
I think it's not about what characteristics your daughter or even son is going to have. It's just allowing them to organically develop and not already typecast them into a specific group and and guiding them in that way just because you perceive them to be a specific way due to their gender. And I think a lot of girls and guys run into this issue of like, oh, I can't like the color pink, or I can't enjoy spa services because I'm a male, or that women can't enjoy bourbon, or they can't, enjoy a football game just because it's not typically socially acceptable for women to do that or for men to do that. I think all the women on this panel believe that if you thoroughly enjoy something, just go for it. And I would hope that people raise their children in that same way. And that goes upon sexual preferences or any type of preferences that they desire.
I absolutely agree with Twa. I think raising your child, you should raise them to love themselves. I think that's super important. And then another thing is to sorry, completely blanking. But to basically not already put them in a frame of who they're supposed to be. And basically just going off on what Twa said is to let them be whomever they want and not already tell them that they are different. Because once you are already telling them that you want them to grow up to be strong female, you're already spacing them out into a certain category that they know they're growing up, they're supposed to be different.
I think that's great clarification. I think Twa and Jen, you guys both eloquently said it. And just to clarify, like when I'm referring to the boys club, it's like the concept of them creating it themselves, right? Like the differentiating, that's when they're creating the divide between man and woman and what categorizes them into each bucket. So when I'm referring to that, it's referring to when you yourself or someone else is categorizing certain traits into one certain clumped group. Typically in a work environment, we consider them the boys club. Something that I've seen a lot in a company that may have had existing, stereotypes around that. So
it's ironic because I remember growing up as a kid. I don't know if I would classify myself as a tomboy, but I definitely was not into like makeup or anything. Like, well, then again, I was a kid, but that's not relevant. But I remember I would always just go to school. It was kind of gross now that I think about it, just like wearing like plain t-shirts and jeans and sneakers. And I didn't really care about like dresses or skirts. And I remember my mom, she was like, no, you have to wear a purse because you're a girl. And I was like, I don't understand that. Cause like, what does me wearing a purse have to do with being a girl? But I feel like growing up, a lot of times in Asian households, you have that traditional like gender norm or whatever. My dad was always the one who took care of everyone. And my mom was just a really organized mom, always cooked dinner, handled our finances and things like that. And now I feel like, now that I'm older, all my family cares about is like me finding that man of the household who makes more money than me and like all that kind of stuff. Which I mean, I understand, I think from a parent perspective, but I feel like it's something that my parents kind of pointed out to me. And I don't know, it was something that I kind of rejected a lot growing up, but now I feel like I am my own person and whatever, if I want to be quote unquote girly for a day, like I will. But I don't know. I don't like adding a gender label to things. And I think that's the whole, like one of the boys kind of thing that I don't like. Like if a girl likes beer or something, all of a sudden like, oh, what? You don't like wine? Like that's so strange. Or I remember at my workplace, it's really male dominated. I'm probably one out of less than a handful of females. And it actually doesn't bother me too much, but it is something that I notice just because, I mean, I'm in a meeting and if I'm the only female standing there, it's a little odd. But yeah, I feel like they always do things like video game night or whatever. And I remember I had told my coworker that I used to play like League of Legends and they were like so surprised. And at that point I felt like they kind of categorized me as like, oh, you're a girl who likes video games or that kind of stuff. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm a human being and I can like whatever I want to like. I just don't like gender labels on things.
Yeah, and then I guess how would you raise your girls to be independent? You just raise them to be independent. Like just raise your children to be decent human beings the way that, you know, like the way you see the females around you or other males around you as well.
Krista?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, like even a lot of you guys are talking about like raising your girls like from like a lot of you guys are talking about gender roles when the girls are younger, but even now, like my parents still put gender roles on me, and I'm just like, can you not? Because like, you know, even simple things as like choosing what alcohol to drink, um, depending on my gender, and I'm just like, well, not letting me have these choices. Well, like telling me which choices I should have and shouldn't have, it does like put a damper on my independence, you know, like if you want to raise an independent woman, you should show her how to make her own choices, how to be educated in making her choices, and you know, leaving it from there, not showing her, you know, the difference between a guy choice and a girl choice. Yes, teach her how to make her own drinks.
So we have an audience question. How do we challenge gendered roles and advocate for the gender equality in the Vietnamese community? Let's go
I
with
forgot. Sorry, Lee.
I think MP wants to speak. Sorry.
You want to go? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh.
It's your turn.
I said just talk. You know, it's about having conversations. So my dad is probably one of the most sexist like father. Like just growing up, and still like to this day, oh, you're a girl, you shouldn't do this. But whatever. But this is the same man that like taught me how to punch a guy. The same man that taught me like how to actually beat somebody up and taught me to be so financially independent. Was the same man that like, you know, puts these certain gender expectations. So it's just if I can have a conversation with my father slowly over almost like 2 decades now, that I think it's just being able to talk and this will be a topic for another day, but be able to talk in the language that your parents understand, that the older generations understand, and even educating our own peers, just having conversation.
I guess that's true. I never really thought about that because, like, growing up, I think I was always put in the stereotypical, like, oh, you're a girl, you have to be taken care of by a guy. But then, like, my dad's like, don't take crap from anyone. Like, he's very big on, like, me being independent and always taking care of myself. But then at the same time, like, eventually you get to that age where
when you hit like puberty, like dads have no idea what to do.
Marriage and stuff, because I'm one of the youngest in my family, like even out of my cousins and stuff like that, and so everyone really treats me like the baby whenever it comes to dating or like life decisions, like my job. They're really big on me being able to take care of myself, but then when it comes to like a partner, they're like, oh, make sure you have someone that takes care of you. And then I don't know, I think dating nowadays is just so different, where it's more about like a joint care for each other. Yeah. Doesn't matter who takes care of the other more.
You know, it's so funny. I was thinking like, okay, my parents are so warped into like Viet TV that if I could like have a infomercial or a show about how they could be convinced, because they're convinced like these pills on these Vietnamese TV shows can like cure miracles and like all kinds of other things. Like if I could do any way possible to get things up on this Vietnamese television so they could like hear about it from somewhere else. And this is like not really realistic, but you know, my parents believe everything that they see on Vietnamese television. So it'd be pretty funny to see. Random tidbit.
To add on to that, to the question on how to challenge gender roles in the Vietnamese community, I've actually had I have some experience on working with the outside Vietnamese community, as in like business professionals or like nonprofits within the Vietnamese community. And there has been a situation where I've sat at a meeting and voiced my opinion, and the person who was moderating that meeting turned to a male and asked, what was your opinion? And well, that was like, what? And then one of the things that I decided to do was after the meeting, I walked up to him and called him out on it. And I think that is something that we all should do if we notice something that happened that wasn't fair, or that we felt like was not appropriate, or something that just bothered us on how we felt they treated differently from in terms of because we're female, in terms, and then valuing a male opinion over us. It's something that we should definitely talk about. Maybe not call out publicly, or you can, totally up to you. But I really think that letting people know how you feel about a certain situation really educates people. And then just like what MP and Jen said, that educating or just talking about it in general is something that will help move the conversation along. But yeah, it's really difficult, especially in the Vietnamese community, because most of them come from the generation of our parents, which means that they most likely share all those same values that we were given when it comes to gender roles and how we should be protected. And I think just being females viewed as delicate or fragile, that it puts us in a lower position where we may seem like we don't know as much as other our male counterparts. But that is just an opinion and stuff that I've gone through. But yeah. Maybe we can pass it on to Tuan.
So I think we're going to move on to the next question. It's kind of related, but I think this is a little bit more concrete. So there's this phenomena of females who are a little bit more outspoken, can put their foot down a little bit more, are often considered loud, bossy, or like the B word. And I just want to know, like, how many of us on the panel have dealt with this before? Everyone, except maybe me. I don't know. I feel like I have, but I don't remember like a specific example. But let's have Twa speak on her experience.
Sure. I've actually gotten that comment, I think, from internal staff here at UNAFSA, and it's not to say I don't love my staff, because I do. But I've noticed, I think, the longevity of how long I've been here and witnessing how male presidents will conduct business, which I even feel is even more aggressive in their timelines or even approach. They're seen as the boss, or he's getting down to business. And then when I do it, they're just like, wow, you're a bitch. Get out of my face. And I think objectively looking at it, I'm doing the same thing. I'm thinking of the bigger picture to deliver a product. But yet I'm getting scrutinized because maybe they're just not used to it. And I feel that when I'm conducting UNAFSA work, I'm actually, I wouldn't say softer, because that's not a good description, but I'm not as aggressive. At work, I'm even more aggressive. I'm pretty straightforward, and it might just be the industry that I'm in when it comes to consulting and dealing with clients and contracts and whatnot. But yeah, it's really frustrating because I'm just trying to get the job done. And a lot of the times I feel like I do bring a sense of empathy to it. So when I do say something, I say it with weight and I say it with consideration, and I've analyzed it. I've critically think of solutions in the situation, and just to be called a bitch just because they don't like my approach or that they're not used to that, it's really concerning. And also it's like a blow to your motivation. Yeah. I don't know if anybody wants to speak on that either.
It's so interesting. I have the reverse. So I'm in sales, and I'm in a very sales type of environment. So I almost had to do the reverse. And when I acted that way, it was almost, it caught people off guard. It was like, whoa, it's like, I didn't know Lucy was like that. And I was like, why is this so surprising to you? And we did some kind of assessment here at my work where it assessed like your personality, and I was very high dominance. And a lot of it's like, oh, like people are surprised by that. And I'm pretty high dominance in my personal life too. And it almost, I think people are uncomfortable a lot of times when you're put in that type of light. So I totally relate. And I don't think women who are aggressive or assertive or know what they want or know what they want to say needs to be labeled in that way. I think it's almost positive that women are speaking up, and they should. It's healthy. So that's my 2 cents.
I don't know if you guys get this too, but I feel like sometimes it's just how I look. Like I have hair and makeup done. I'm a female. I like to dress up and stuff, and people find that quality is supposed to be like, you're supposed to be soft and demure, and it's okay if you are naturally, but I feel like there are just moments where I'm definitely just more assertive in what I want, and how I look and what I guess artistically express myself as aesthetically. It's not a correlation to my personality or even the task at hand, objectively looking at it. So yeah.
I maybe agree with that because I've never been called, bossy or bitchy, even though I know that I'm actually very assertive and people tell me that. But it's hard calling someone a bitch when you're wearing like panda scrubs like I've been wearing today, or like you're 4'11". So I think the appearance does play a lot into it, or maybe it's just the way that I say things, or maybe my voice or something. Maybe people just call me that behind my back and I don't know, and they're too afraid to tell it to my face.
Now that I think about it, I think there is some truth to that. So while I was serving on board for UNAFSA, the staff would always see me serious because, I got to put that face on. And same thing, like Toa says, like, I feel like past presidents before, like, Ani, agenda was the same. For the, like, side tidbit, every single president of UNAFSA has been in the business industry. It's just how we work. And then at work, or now at my startup, I'm very, like, I dress very down. So I don't think anybody has ever called me, like, a bitch. At least, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It's funny because when I met up with her today, she was like, "Oh, I actually dressed up." I'm like, "You're wearing a Harry Potter cardigan."
I'm wearing a cardigan and jeans.
But yeah, MP made a comment on the side chat earlier about how a lot of times, like, the word bitch is associated with, like, as a feminine term. Like, I feel like I rarely ever hear men being called that. It's not very common, and so. Mm-hmm. There's that. And then also Lucy brought up the whole RBF thing. I know a lot of people like to associate me with an RBF. I feel like I'm never really aware of it unless someone points it out. And so a lot of people, I think at first when they meet me, they just find me super intimidating because my face is just so expressionless. And all of a sudden that makes me a bitch without getting to know me. I guess it would be different if you got to know me and you still thought that way about me, and then I would find your opinion pretty valid. But otherwise, I do think that the B word, because I've said it 3 times now, and I'm probably gonna, be punished for it later. Yeah, I feel like a lot of it is just with aesthetics or, visuals. I think in terms of, like, behavior, though, I don't know if anyone's ever associated me as such. Maybe, like, aggressive is a better word, or just, like, really blunt. A lot of people don't like bluntness or people being straightforward. So
Did you want to add something, Lucy?
Oh, I was just saying on, like, the side chat, I don't know. I feel like I talk a lot, so I, like, try to refrain from. I've gotten a lot of feedback on this. But, like, other men typically call other men bitches. They're like, "Oh, dude, you're being such a bitch." It's always to, like, almost make the word and the term sound feminine, like as if you're doing something that someone else might, not do or don't have the guts to do. So I think that reference is just so unpleasant. But that's what I was thinking. That's what came to mind.
What's interesting is, sorry.
Okay, I'll wait.
I feel like the B word has become such a normal everyday language. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna really embarrass. MP, when you type, it mutes the microphone. Oops. But yeah, it's like, I think the word bitch has become so normalized in like everyday language. Like, when people go around and they're like, yes, bitch, like that kind of stuff, like it's such a normal part of everyday language now. So like, I feel like sometimes when friends call each other that, like they just think of it as like joking around. I remember like in my more early days of college, I was like that with my friends too. Like we would just like swear at each other, but not think anything of it at the time, because it was just like, I don't know, it became normal, part of everyday life. And I think that's sort of how it's become now. Even when you're more quote unquote mature, it just hurts a little more because you don't know if they are trying to insult you, or if they're just saying it without being considerate of your feelings.
Okay, so we're moving on now. We discussed a little bit about prejudice against gender, but let's broaden that a little bit in terms of receiving or being on the receiving end of unconscious or conscious bias or prejudice due to, either gender or age or race or whatever. What have been some of your experiences there? Like, it's definitely like a barrier to success, right? What has your experience been in terms of not having received the same opportunities, rewards, or acknowledgement because of that bias? And do you have any tips on breaking the glass ceiling, if there is one in your industry? Let's go with Krista.
So the question is kind of a long question, but bias because of my identity. Can you just repeat the question?
Yes, because of your identity. Talk about a time when you've experienced unconscious bias or prejudice from someone else due to your gender, age, race, or some other part of your identity where that caused you to not receive certain opportunities or rewards or some acknowledgement because of having dealt with that.
Oh.
And how did you get past that? And what are some tips on breaking that cycle or breaking the glass ceiling in your industry? Kind of a long question.
Yeah, I guess for me, I really haven't experienced outright prejudice that kind of inhibited what I wanted to do, because I grew up in a pretty diverse area, but still wasn't very high. I didn't have a high percentage of Asian. So, even being a person of color in an area that's like more dominated by Black and Latinos, I was able to. They did like pin. I was able to rise above it, not rise above, but like my successes were more easily highlighted because, they didn't have to compare me against as many white people who, historically test really high and all that. So yeah, for me, like I didn't really experience that much of it, but I guess now that I'm entering the workforce as like very dominated, now that I'm in the healthcare field, which is very dominated by women and very dominated by Asians, I'm having a hard time, I guess, like being recognized the same way that I used to be. And I'm still trying to figure it out because I'm only, a year into my career, but I think just doing what I do and doing what's natural to me, which is going in day out and taking in as many opportunities as I can. Like I was presented with an opportunity to have a job and then 2 jobs, and now I have 3 simultaneous jobs, which is crazy. But I think in the long run, it helps me because having all these experiences and being one of the few Asian females in my specific career field is a very special thing that you don't see, and it's something that people will realize later on. Yeah, that's it for me.
Hua, can you speak on this too?
Sure. I think for women now, it's just leading by example in order to break that glass ceiling. So for myself, I've taken on interns at my former job. I was very straightforward with them as far as the challenges go and my personal experience, and I think they were really appreciative of that. And I also had male interns at the same time. Once again, the same thing. And I think it's just passing on that message, because it's very easy to experience things and then keep it to yourself. But just opening that dialogue and also having them sit back and think about how actions do affect each other and the environment and the culture of things. And then also, I think like trying to break that glass ceiling is also going to your higher ups, because if you don't speak about it, they probably won't know what's going on, or that everything is on par and good to go. So if I've actually spoken to managers that have done things that I wasn't comfortable with, or yeah, just approaching HR and stuff like that, being vocal is one of the more important things to do when it comes to breaking the glass ceiling. And in my personal daily actions, and I spoke a little bit about this on the last webinar, but there's this thing where people praise the ideal or the idea in itself, but they don't practice it. So if I've actually called out male and female friends when they're doing something that's just like totally against what they had just previously spoken about when it comes to diversity and equality. So, and people do it because it's just a natural reinforcement throughout years and decades. And yeah, so I think in practice, you have to sit back and critically think, what did I just say and what did I just do? Does that contribute or does that harm the very ideals of what it is I'm preaching in? It's not supposed to be a fad or a short-term movement. It's supposed to be an overall societal change. So it starts from every angle.
Yeah, so you mentioned breaking the glass ceiling, and I think that's also important in that, you know, for me, like I've had a lot of opportunities because I was, you know, in the right place at the right time, or that I was able to follow a certain path that was already paved for me. But, you know, even though I feel like I didn't struggle as much as other people did with resources, I definitely feel like it's important for me to use my position to have resources for others. Like, for example, I know a lot of people who kind of struggle with like the pre-med track, and I'm like, it's okay to not be a doctor. You can always do other things like I did. And I think it helps people realize that, yeah, even though I had a lot of success in my life, I'm not using it all for myself. I'm trying to make it so that others can use the successes that I've had as well. And that, you know, that helps break the cycle of not having enough resources and then like going to the next cycle, and, you know, that perpetuating, if that makes sense.
So it's kind of related to the topic we were talking about earlier, which was mentorship, and we framed it in saying that we are the ones to seek mentorship, but we also have to remember that we have to help break the cycle, like you said, by being a mentor yourself to younger women too. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
For the next question, I want to talk about gaining self-confidence as a woman. Can Jen Yang speak on that?
Yeah, for sure. Growing up, I definitely had a lot of insecurities, and gaining self-confidence is definitely something that was very difficult for me growing up. I didn't have like much love for myself growing up, and therefore there's a lot of issues that I had to deal with. But yeah, MP is definitely correct. Fake it till you make it. That's exactly what I did basically. I think just showing that you're confident, whether you are or not, gives other people confidence in you, and suddenly you also gain confidence. Being female, one of the things that I had to battle was, I guess growing up, you don't really feel different until someone tells you you're different. So I basically had to acknowledge to myself that yes, I am female, I am different, I am going to be treated differently. And then what am I going to do about it? How am I going to deal with it? And then you go from there, and you fake it till you make it. You figure out what you need to do to get a level of respect that you want. However you do it, it's up to you, because female rights, do whatever you want, do whatever you need. And yeah, I think that's one part of it. Dealing with doubt, that is something that's really difficult. I think when someone doubts you, you start to doubt yourself. It's not something that you can conquer, but it's something that you learn as you grow. I think that's one of the things that the more experience you gain, the more you know you can do it, and you veto their doubt for you because you know it's not true. And I think it comes with experience, and it probably will come with age as well. Does anyone want to add to that?
Lucy, can you add on top of that?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been, I've definitely lacked self-confidence more on the physical appearance than I would say in my openness or ability to lead as a female. However, I do empathize with folks who may be a little bit afraid of taking risks. And I think that's the biggest thing as a female woman in leadership or in any capacity, is that you must take risks, and that the only way you can challenge yourself and really push yourself out of that comfort zone is to take the risk and fail. A lot of it is prime examples of what I do on a day-to-day basis, and I think that's important in building self-confidence. Yes, it knocks you down the first round, but once you start to fail, and once you start to see, most people, I think, really reflect on their failures and say, what can I do the next time so I don't do it again? And that's really reflective of then building confidence. Once you're getting good at something, or once you've done it over and over and over again, you become what I would consider an expert, right? They say it takes 10,000 hours to actually become an expert in something. You have to keep doing it until you feel confident. And I think that's a buildup for any person, not just women. So I think it's a good thing for women to take more risks and maybe not hold themselves back a little bit, maybe in settings that might make them uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is good, and it'll get you through a lot of challenges.
Thanks, Lucy, for talking about taking risks. I think as like people in our 20s, we look up to others who have had a lot more years of experience and are successful, and we fail to remember that everyone has been in our shoes before, and they've failed like thousands and thousands of times. We just were not there to see it. And so I would definitely concur about taking risks and being okay with failures. So just to move on now, I want to go into a segment where we give an opportunity to all of the panelists to ask each other questions, in case I missed anything. Let's start with Fa.
Let's see here. So my question is geared towards Lucy. I've had the pleasure of knowing her for a very long time, and we work together on projects and initiatives, and I'm very proud to see her grow as a leader. I guess my question to you, being a recruiter and being in such a high-stress job, how have you dealt with that? And what is your biggest lessons from taking on and moving to San Fran as well, and just taking on such a challenging role?
That is such a good question. Can you give me like a second to think about it? Because I want to be eloquent and I want to be thoughtful and I want to be all the great things that great people. No, I'm kidding. First of all, it's challenging. 100% like the job I'm in. If most people don't know what I do, I'm in sales and I was for a recruiting company. And to kind of backtrack, I guess, with how I handle it on a day-to-day, it's definitely relying on my peers. I think a lot of what people and females and myself in particular is that I've been given a lot of feedback, and it's about almost feeling as if you have to do everything on your own, and that's totally not true. I've had to rely on a lot of my peers here, a lot of the mentors I've looked up to, and that's been really, really tough too, because I think when you're in a career and a profession, you want to be able to do it on your own. You want to be successful. You want other people to look up to you. But how do you do that without other people, you know? So that's been really successful for me, just being in such a challenging job. And I talked about it just now, but taking risks. Like, I am encouraged to take risks every day, even if I fail 10 times, even if I fail once, like I have to take it. You don't get what you don't take. Or at least try to take. Not referencing to stealing, so don't do that, folks, but for certain things. And I think a lot of what I've learned to do now is provide people with a reason why. When I was asked to write a biography, I wrote a string of things, and Mi-Foong can attest to this the most, but explain to people why I do things, how I do things, and what's the purpose of doing them. That's really helped me through my career as to what the purpose of my role here is. The moving to San Francisco part and kind of the tail end of your question was like how tough it's been, and oh my God, it's been so hard. I'm so homesick sometimes. But a lot of times I think moving to a new place and being in a new environment is to embrace change. And as females and as women, I think change comes in a lot of forms. And I've taken on all of it. Maybe not all, maybe there are a couple things left out there that I haven't taken on, but I think a lot of us have actually moved on the panel, like to new places. Jen, Twa, yourself as well. Lee moved from Seattle. And I think sorry, I just let you guys hear me. But I think that's the biggest thing, is like taking on everything and anything and being okay to almost recap and say, yes, I am stressed and it's okay, but don't collapse. There have been a lot of times I've collapsed in my career, and even in my personal life as well. And a lot of it was, it's okay to do that, and it's okay to have moments in your life as a female to peel back away from things, and move and think about what's next for me and what the progression is like. Yeah, it's very emotional, but thank you for the question, Paul.
Lucy, do you want to ask the question next?
Yes, I do want to ask a question next. I actually have like had a string of questions for almost everyone, and I'm still like typing away. I wanted to ask Mi-Foong this, and I personally know a good deal about Mi-Foong, but what perceptions have people had of you, and how have you handled that personally and professionally? May it be positive or negative or even potentially harmful to how you are today? And what do you advise other female leaders when they have negative perceptions of them? We kind of covered this, but maybe on a personal perspective from you.
So I had a feeling that was you, Lucy. So for I would say, for those who are watching, are more familiar with the side that I present to UNASA, and that would be my bitchy side, bitch counter, like number 15, 16. And I think it's I think I've been so jaded with it, because I wasn't like this in high school. I was very shy. I was like very quiet, very just very nice. I was very nice. And then I think I got burned one too many times while doing BSA stuff, that I just turned into a no business, no nonsense kind of mentality. And I think there has been several occasions that has hurt me. All of those occurrences were all male counterparts who were talkers, visionaries, and people who wanted me to follow and listen to their advice. I would say this is not going to be the best advice, just putting it out there. I would say just own it. There are people who say you rule with fear and stuff like that. I'm just like that. If that is the leadership quality or the leadership asset that I have that is the strongest and works the most effectively, then I'm going to do what I need to do to get what our team promised to accomplish, right? So if I can, if that's the role that I have to do, and my team members can put on different personas to make the whole team work, then that's what I have to do. Professionally, I'm not like that. I think I'm too nice at work, and I deal with my own like microaggressions at work in a different way. I think I would just say, as long as you are self-aware, over time you get the insight and the wisdom and the confidence that you need to deal whatever situation you're in your own way.
I really like what you said. That's a really good leadership tip, and that you should take on your leadership style without being afraid of other people like fighting against it, because you have a team of other people with different leadership styles. And this goes, this is another tangent, but this is where diversity is a strength. As a team, you want people who are diverse, not just like racially or gender, but even like leadership styles and personality styles. So cool. I'm going to take a break from the panelists asking each other questions to address one from an audience member. As an Asian woman, who are often fetishized, it is hard to be to have sex positivity, and it's hard to be comfortable with your body and as well as sex. How do you suggest to erase the stigma of fetishizing, or I think it's, how do you suggest to discourage fetishizing? That's how I'm translating the question.
So I think the biggest approach to that would be empowered sexually yourself. Thing of a woman or of anything in that manner is one, a power move on just a specific trait that they're subjecting onto you, how you should be. And it's much just like the same thing of organically developing. A female, I feel like, should be empowered sexually. You like what you like, and it's okay to do that. I think sex in general is like it's a taboo subject, especially here in the US, just because overall, like, just that talk is really uncomfortable to people. And in that idea in itself, it doesn't create an open field for women to be open with each other. And to really understand like their bodies, what resources are out there, how to protect yourself, like Jen was saying earlier. And there are resources that exist, but I think just people aren't searching in the right avenues for it. And then media plays a big part as far as how Asian women are viewed. I can't tell you the amount of times a man has approached me and was like, "Oh, you're Asian," and like that. And I was like, "Okay, great. I don't like that. And what you're doing is really creepy." So, yeah. And I think just pointing that out too, because like, if you actually got to know me, I don't fit that picture perfect, whatever you want from me. In fact, you probably end up hating me at the end of the day. And being vocal too. I know in relationships it's hard because you want someone to like you so much that you're willing to bend certain certain like rules that you have for yourself or whatever it is, or even your own comfortability. In the end, it's what you're comfortable with, and it's like a pretty complicated topic in general because it encompasses a lot of things that society has built in. But for myself, is if you're not comfortable with something, say it. Be vocal, and also organically showcase yourself because you want to.
Just to echo off of Tua's point, I think with the question, I think it's the trait when she asked about being Asian woman. I'm going to guess that she's referring to yellow fever, which basically characterizes Asian women as being submissive, and I think that stigma comes with a trait, like Twa said, and it can't be erased because it's already technically stuck in the media of how Asian women are preserved in the first place, which makes it very hard. So it is something that we have to look upon, and we have to see why does this person want a relationship with me? Is it because I fall under these certain traits, or are there other reasons? And then it's for everyone to figure out for themselves whether what the other person's intention is, and I think that's very important. And then just to bring up another point about woman and sex is that because Asian woman is known to be quieter or more submissive, when they are aggressive or more vocal, there's a thing where they get slut shamed. Excuse my language. But it's one of those things where, oh, now that you don't fall under that category, you're suddenly, opening yourself up to a bunch of other things that are not good in terms of that. Does anyone have any more comments?
Okay, so we have about 8 minutes left of our webinar. I'm gonna do another rapid fire round again. So just to wrap up this webinar, tell us the biggest challenge you think that women are facing in the world today, and how do you think we should solve it? Let's go with Krista first.
I keep getting called on for questions first. It's okay. Let's see. What did I say earlier today? Yeah, I said representation in terms of intersectionality. I said this word for Natalie, by the way, because like I've said before, in my field, there's a lot of women, there's a lot of Asians, but there's not a lot of Asian women, at least like in pathology specifically. And so I feel like, it's not like I want to see a bunch of Asian women and be satisfied. I want there to be a lot more representation in terms of like experiences and backgrounds and identities, so that when you walk into a workplace or an organization or something like that, you feel like you can relate to a lot more people, and you feel like it's more diverse and not just like the same old people coming from the same places, or like it's only women but they're all white women and so forth. And I guess the only way that we can, not the only way, but the main way that we can tackle this is by encouraging people to, pursue maybe something that's not typical for their major, Like, I have a friend who started off as like a history major, and her parents told her to become a lawyer, and she wasn't satisfied with that. So she went on to become an art history and archaeology major, and now she's working in San Francisco towards her PhD and like working in museums and all that. And I think it's really cool to see a Vietnamese woman in the museum industry, because I've never seen that kind of thing before. And so, yeah, just taking risks to follow what you truly want and not just doing what is typical or what is expected. That will help. That will help ease underrepresentation in terms of intersectionality. Can I popcorn to somebody? I want to popcorn to MP.
I just wanted to make popcorn noises. What was the question again?
What do you think is the biggest challenge that
Oh.
women face, and how do you suggest to deal with it?
I feel like at least within our own community, we have we kind of siloed ourselves into an echo chamber, right? So all the people that we surround ourselves, all the panelists in here, we are we're motivated to learn more, to engage more, and try to do more, right? And I think the biggest problem that we have is that we aren't vocal enough. So we see a lot of rallies and a lot of marches and they're usually with like white women and their partners, but we don't really see a lot of Asians out there. So I think it's more so we don't talk enough, and then we ourselves don't educate ourselves enough politically, and then to also be out there as well alongside with all of our allies. Because if we are only having these conversations amongst ourselves, sure, we have a stronger support system, but we're not really vocalizing what our struggles are to other people. So whether that be in the workplace, with our friends, with our families, even people you meet at bars, guilty, to just talk about our different struggles, and then converse in such a way that makes other people think about this more conscientiously. Just to improve like one small thing at a time, like don't make your workplace so cold that all the females have blankets around themselves, small stuff like that. Okay, Jen, because she's right there.
It's funny because she has a blanket on her desk. Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to piggyback off of that because I think a lot of it leads back to, I guess, empowerment, right? I personally am not the most outspoken. Stop typing. It keeps muting the microphone.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
I don't think I'm super outspoken or out there. I do tend to just sort of internalize a lot of things, and I find that I don't want to generalize, but I think because of the gender norm that comes with the term female, about being more submissive or to yourself, a lot of external factors try to take advantage of that, and then that sort of leads to catcalling or like imbalances in the workplace. I am a woman in tech, and so it's really common to be in such a male-dominated industry. And for me, I'm fortunate enough to be in a workplace where it doesn't feel like there's a gender divide, but I know, throughout my time in college and trying to find a job, a lot of times I remember I would meet people and we would, have a small talk about what you study, like what you aspire to do. And for whatever reason, being a female that studies computer science is just so surprising. Like everyone would always be shocked that I never really understood the big deal about it. And I remember people would always tell me like, oh, it's going to be so easy for you to find a job because you studied tech and you're a woman. I'm always like, I don't know. I kind of just want to be on an even playing field where, gender isn't the first thing that they see. And so I feel like, if we're willing to speak up more about these kind of things, and I have talked about it with my boss, my coworkers, and, it's something that they recognize is an issue, but it's just, no one really has a real solution for it. But I think if we're able to engage in these discussions with one another, we can work towards more balance, not only in the workplace, but just in the community overall, where it doesn't have to feel like, oh, I'm a female and you're a male, and this is what my role is, and this is what your role is. I just feel like we're all human beings trying to be decent human beings. Can I pop popcorn? It's a Twa. Twa, what do you think is the biggest challenge that females face in the world today?
I say the time period that we're living in now, a lot of the challenges when it comes to voting and equality is a lot better than it used to be in the past. But I feel like it's the same issues as far as being on the same playing field and having the same opportunities as everybody else. So I think one of the biggest things is that the advocacy for each other. I know we've spoken about this before about it's not just females supporting each other, but it's also everybody else supporting females and vice versa. So and I think that's like one of the biggest issues that we face. I still face it today at work. I still face it in everyday life. Yeah, just being not outspoken, but just speaking up. I think a lot of people confuse those ideas. Also, along the lines of Jen saying, like, I don't like to make blanket statements, but especially for like a large group, I think we could always use more critically thinking practices. So I know the media plays a big part in defining people as well as perception of people, but don't believe everything you read, and also look from many sources, and even polarizing viewpoints, just so that you yourself can come to a conclusion. And I think that makes for a better world. As shall popcorn to Lucy.
She's possibly frozen. Oh. Lucy, do you want to go? I think she might be having trouble right now. Jen, do you want to go?
Sorry, did you mean me? I didn't hear the last name. Okay, cool. The question is, if you could give your 18-year-old self, or even any other 18-year-old Asian American woman advice, what would it be? Yeah, actually, I'm very young, so that was 18 years old was like 3 years ago. But if I could go back in time and give myself advice on what I would do, is I would definitely take up leadership positions or opportunities a lot earlier. I would try to do more volunteering. I would try to be more active when I was young, because it gives me more chances to make mistakes and grow as I get older, and I think that's very important.
Oh, sorry. Can I chime in now? I'm a little late to the ballpark. Sorry, I have internet problem. My advice to my 18-year-old self would have been get involved with politics a lot faster, and a lot more equipped in understanding knowledge about myself as a female, what female leaders are out there, and really just focusing on what can we do to make change for women in any capacity. That's what I would have done at 18. I feel like I do it now, but I'm a little late to the ballpark or to the game.
So I think that is gonna wrap up our webinar for today. Thank you everyone for hopping on. I really enjoyed the hour and a half just zoom by. So if you, we have some closing notes here. These panelists are really chatty. Number one, please continue these discussions on the Facebook event if you're looking into further engaging with the panelists. Number two, stay tuned for our final webinar on race relations next Wednesday. Number three, if you have any more ideas for panels, please reach out to pr@unapsa.org. And number four, please check out VSA Awards. Number five, also, if you're tuning in during the middle or the end of this webinar, please check back tomorrow on our YouTube channel, as this entire webinar will be recorded and available for viewing. Great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks. This is fun. We should do it again.
Till next